Hey guys, welcome to another week of a video and audio podcast. We have another treat for you where I bring you inside of my live event that we had in Jersey a few months ago. This is I call it the meat lecture, whereas the main meat of the weekend. And in this podcast and in this video, we did a condensed version of the topic that I taught. What I taught at this live event was a process that I thought of called the nail it, hail it, and scale it model. And the reason why I decided on that was because as I've done this and worked with over 400 businesses now, what I've realized there are certain key fundamental principles independent of how much money you're making. And so the idea of nailing the business model, understanding how to hail it, market and sell it, and then scaling the model up, it doesn't matter what stage of business you are in, whether you haven't started yet or you're making $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 a month. What I realize is people ask me about my process and how I go about helping business owners. And this is exactly what I do. I have a specific framework, and essentially I look to see where the framework is broken with the businesses I'm working with. And oftentimes, if you guys are listening to this and making $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 a month and stuck, pay attention, because mostly something in the nail it section is where you are struggling. So if you are in your business and you feel stuck, you feel like you don't have enough time or money or not building the business you want or love, I can absolutely tell you it is because you have not nailed the business model. If you nail the business model, you're gonna have profit, you're gonna have money in your pocket, you're gonna have time to scale and grow. And if you're not, then you're gonna struggle. So I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I can't wait to see you next week. So as I thought about putting this event together, there's so many things going on. There's AI, and there's Google, and there's ads, and there's marketing, and there's workshops, and there's just a thousand things. And it was challenging to figure out in which direction I wanted to go. Because when I put these together, we do 3 a year, and again, there's how many of you guys feel like there's 1,000 things you need to do in your business, right? Well, there's 10,000 things that I want to teach you. So whatever you feel, I feel it times 1,000,000,000. But as I reflected back, this is our 9th live event. And if you haven't seen, I asked the team to do this, so thank you guys for executing on it. We have our give table, but what I asked the team to do was up on the front on that bar, we have a picture from every event that we've done so far, and this is our 9th one. So we try to cover and show you the history of where we've been as well, and how small it started and how it's grown, and we appreciate all of you for being here. But the idea with it is, I kept coming back to like the same themes over and over and over. And as I started to think, I started to trace back my journey of where I am today and potentially where I got stuck along the way, and what I wished I would have known back then and how much further and faster I could have gone. And while there was a lot of tactics that I wish I had known, the world that I live in now is less about the tactics and more about the frameworks, more about the system and the process in which I think about it. And so one of the coolest things that I get to do is I essentially get to relive my journey, and it is the coolest thing ever when I see you guys in the position that I was in and solve a problem significantly faster than I ever did. Because the number one thing in business, again, is not the tactics. You'll learn them. It's going to be the speed in which you can execute and implement them. And so if I have any effect on you guys, my coach told me this years ago. He said, listen, you're going to do well either way. My job is only to help you make it happen faster. I want to shortcut your path to success. And so as I started to think about the lessons I've learned and what I've done in my career and my life, people always ask me, what's the biggest regret you've had in your business? What's the biggest regret you've had since you started? And I look back, and if I'm being truthful, I always say the same thing. I said, I've done mostly all the right things. I've done a lot really well. The problem is that every step of the way, I was too slow. And most of the time, it's just simply because I didn't know. And it took me so long to actually figure it out. And so as I walked through my journey with that was what I came up with as we're talking about today. So if it's okay, I'm going to walk with you through that journey that I had, and then I'm going to give you some really good tactics, takeaways, and frames to break. Now, what's fascinating about this, we had our CEO day yesterday, and how many times, 25 times that I reference, I'm going to teach this today. I'm so glad you have this issue. I'm so glad we had this. We came back to it over and over and over and over again, and we went off piece, then we came back and off, and I was like, wait, but I'm going to teach this tomorrow. You're going to hear this. You're going to hear this. So what we're going to go through today, I think, is going to be unbelievably valuable for everyone here, because it's going to make it so simple so that you can go home and take action, and importantly, understand if you're off track, potentially why you're off track, and do we have just a fundamental issue. So if you take it back, this was me. This was me in 2011, 10, something like that. And I was you guys don't know me as a clinician, but the passion that I have for business today and the love of which I do what I do now, I was that person as a clinician. So don't make the mistake that I'm a business person. I'm you. I'm a clinician. And I have proof here that I was pretty damn good. Because even in school, I was winning awards for clinical skills and presentation. And as you guys can see, in our school, the school that I went to, we did things that were so practical to everyday practice. Because if you can see, the topic that I was able to present on was exercise-induced asthma. Because we all know chiropractors treat that. But it didn't matter, because the thing that didn't change was I had standards back then. However, I put it to my clinical work. But I was a clinician. Jake and I, we flew down to Puerto Rico to the ACCA Sports Symposium, and we had a poster presentation, and I won the presentation, the whole thing, and it was a whole cool thing. Like, I was a clinician. And the reason why was because I'm actually a really good student. And I've always said my goal in life is always just to become the best student. And I was. Why? Because the mentors that I was around told me that I just needed to become a world-class clinician, and that would be more than enough. It'd be more than enough. How many of you guys were told that, have been told that by mentors along the way? Raise your hand. Raise your hand. You just need to be a great clinician. And if you study hard and you take all this and you do all this stuff, you're going to be just fine. I believed it too. That's what I was told. And I believed it so much that not only did I do well in school, but I went outside of school to learn even more. Because again, the same principles and standards that I apply today to go find coaching and mentorship and do all the things and the stuff and the marketing and the sales that I do now, I applied that to something different. Because my goal is to become the best one I could be, because I was a good student and because I listened, and that's what they told me. But I was great with patients because that's what they told me. Every teacher, every seminar I went to, that's what they said. Be great with patients. If you deliver world-class care, you're going to be just fine. And I continued. I went through all the DNS stuff, which actually this has paid off more for me now than it did then, because we literally now get people, God bless Peter Attia, who comes into our office because he now is interviewing these people about DNS who are now coming into our practice. And I took all of the courses, I invested in the clinical skills, but I didn't really have an idea how business worked, like none of us did. And I was just like you. How would I know? No one told me to do that. The thing that was crazy as I look back on it was that I was the problem. Well, why? It wasn't just I was gullible or I believed in it, is I didn't have the right context. Because the people that I was learning from, this is what they knew. And this is what they promoted. And in fact, this is actually a great picture of that, because you guys that have taken DNS, that is from Prague. And all of these doctors, all of these practitioners in Prague, they work in a hospital system. And when you go to a McKinsey seminar and you teach and you learn from the McKinsey practitioners, sure, some of them are in private practice, but a lot of them work in hospital systems, or they work in insurance practices. And so when you ask them about how to apply this in their business, they answered your question, but they didn't have the same context that was required. But I didn't know that. I didn't ask the right questions. I didn't understand that the thing that worked for them, the treatment plan that worked in a hospital system in Prague, is not going to work in Bridgewater, New Jersey. Because for all of us, we go to the seminars and we start to think, what do we think about when we go? Okay, this is a great clinical seminar, but what do you all think? How am I going to apply this in my practice? And you ask those questions, which are the right questions. But what I've learned is that when they tell you that how they apply it in their practice, it's completely irrelevant. Because then you start dealing with things that we deal with here. Insurance, non-insurance, people have to pay the bill, and it's great to have someone do DNSC for 12 fucking weeks, but they also don't realize that it's free there and it costs $3,000 or $4,000 here. Well, who's gonna have that conversation? And what happens when that person's out of pain in the 4th session and they can still do 6 more sessions because it's socialized medicine, but that's not the way it works here. No one talked about that. And so it wasn't wrong. There was nothing wrong. It's just not the same. It's just not the same. And so we can still love and learn all of the clinical seminars. We can learn all the clinical seminars. We can do all of that. And I'm not saying not to. In fact, I would put our group of people that are sitting in this room as some of the highest level practitioners in the country, probably in the world. Because you guys have all done all of it. But then the question becomes, why do we not have the same success in our business? Something's off. Now, throughout my journey as a student, all through school, it was interesting as I reflect back because I actually said the right things. I said the right things. And I remember the basis of this whole program was created on what I used to think back in 2009, 10, and 11. I was right. I said I wanted to be a world-class business owner and I wanted to have a world-class clinic. I wanted to be a great practitioner. And I remember being in school very early on and thinking and seeing the people out there and the results out there. And I used to listen. I used to get advice from people, and I could never connect it because the people that I would ask business advice from didn't practice how I wanted to practice. And the people that I would get clinical advice from oftentimes didn't even have a business. You can be world-class at your craft. And you can be world-class at business. But as a general rule, you're mostly not good at both. But even back then in 2009, 10, I'm a stubborn motherfucker. You know that. I was like, I'm going to do both. But there was a problem. There was a problem. Because I took all the things. I did all the stuff. I did the McKenzie's and the DNS and the ART. I mean, you name 3 letters, I had it, man. The problem was I only prepared for one. And one of the things I've learned now as I connect the dots backwards, the people that are the most successful in life, the most fulfilled in life, are the ones who have the most alignment in their life, where what they say they want and the actions they take are aligned. It's just like in your practice. People say they really want to solve this problem, but they can't come to their appointment on Tuesday. Nah, that's too expensive. And most of those people live in a world where they're always frustrated, they're always upset, they're always angry. Why? Because the things that they say are not the same actions that they take. My friends, that was me. And I promise, out of the 100 and something people that are here today, that is also you too. Now the good news is we're here. We're here. And so someone turned a light bulb on to recognize that something had to change. So I graduated school, and again, I wasn't business focused. I thought I wanted to, but I didn't know what I was doing, so I decided to become an associate. And in that town of Westfield, New Jersey, I got a job. And when I say I was all in on being a clinician, like I actually did mean it. I found one clinic where it was a really good clinical practice. And I was able to do all of the things. Now this is 2012 and we were doing 30-minute appointments at that time where every other chiro was like 5, 8, 9 minutes. So it was really quite good. And I worked with a clinician, an owner who was really, really good, world class. I had opportunities and I worked at CrossFit games and I was able to work with a D1 gymnastics team. I mean, I had all the opportunities. I continued through all of the clinical seminars. But I also started to see some of the cracks. And I started to see that potentially there's a problem, that the future wasn't what I wanted it to be. I saw where this was going, and I didn't really like it. In fact, I didn't like it at all. I remember about 4 weeks in, again, my boss at the time was booking on the half hour, and she had 2 kids. She had a son that was 3 or 4 at the time, talking about a long time ago. They both play high school football now. That's how long it is. The one was like 4 or 5, the other one was 1 or 2 years old. And I remember the first thing she told me was she was back in the clinic a week and a half after her second son was born because she had to be back. That was the first crack. And I was like, ooh, that doesn't sound good. But this was legitimately how her schedule would look. She would show up to the clinic. She would run in after dropping her son off at daycare. She would walk in. She would put her bag down. The patient would be waiting for her. She would start at usually 8, 8:39, and she would go half hour, half hour, half hour, half hour. And I shit you not, there was no lunch. There was no lunch. And it would be 8 o'clock. 4 o'clock is generous. It was usually 6 or 7. Patient, 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 patient. And I started to look at that. I'm like, I don't know about this, man. I don't know if this is going to be the next 30 years. Like, I'm willing to work and grind, but is this it? Is this what I signed up for? Because this, I don't know about this. Has anyone done this, by the way? Has anyone done this? It's fucking awful, isn't it? It's not bad for a little while, but when you don't think that it's ever going to end and there's no path or path forward, that's when we get in trouble. But over time, things started to change and move a little bit. When I joined this practice, it was very, very small. It was me, it was my boss, and we had like an outsourced biller. And the first thing that I did in my internship, actually, we were an out-of-network insurance practice, and the practice I started to learn more about like billing. And again, the identity of Justin was a clinician, and I'm going to make a living being a clinician and just treat patients better, and this is how you're going to be good. But things started to change because I started to look at other aspects of the business. No one else was doing it, so I started to pay attention. And I remember one time I was just looking at our billing, and I realized that my boss at the time was billing, 2 units. You guys know the billing, 2 units for a 30-minute appointment, and really she would be able to bill 4. She was under billing significantly. And all of a sudden I was like, oh, interesting. Like, this had nothing to do with me treating a patient. We just increased the revenue of this clinic just by having a better system in place in the business. It's not about getting a better result. It was just about optimizing for something. Interesting. The next thing, we were actually still 2012 on paper notes. And my boss had an EHR system. She just never had time to implement it because she was busy treating patients. And so I helped to implement that. And I'm like, okay, well, now this streamlined our billing process. We got paid faster. More money was coming in. My bonus was affected by that. Now all of a sudden I'm making money faster. More money is coming in. We're not losing patients. So now it's like, okay, interesting. Other things are happening. I'm like, it isn't about just getting a result with a patient. There's more here. And then one day in our new office, I was sitting there, and I will never forget. I was literally sitting in the office, and my boss, she was like going in to treat a patient, and we were talking about some of the business stuff that we were doing. And I remember I said to her, I said, I really like this business stuff. I said, if one day there's a time in this business that I could just run the business and didn't really have to treat a patient anymore, I would be okay with that. I think that maybe was something I could do. And I'll never forget, she turned as she was walking, and she said, Justin, we're doctors. We treat patients. And it was in that moment that I was like, okay, that's probably the end of the road here. I probably have to go. And that was in about April of 2015. And as of July 1st, 2015, 10 years, this month, Strive to Move has a 10-year anniversary. And so, but that's the story of how we got here. Now, as I've said before, the one thing that I'm willing to do is I'm willing to do the work. I'm willing to do the work. I always have been. I always will be. That's just who I am. And I continue to get out there and do all of the things. I remember when I first opened, my cousin is a pediatrician. He's now retired. And I called him before I opened. I said, what should I do? He goes, just go and talk to anyone that'll listen to you. And so I did that. I went every gym I could. This was at CrossFit Chimney Rock, right down the street. And I kept going to these events and the seminars. And I would teach these seminars and be like, how did it go? It was great. How many new patients you get? None. What are you doing? Branding. What did I do? More of it. Because if one didn't work, maybe 2 would, maybe 3 would, maybe 5 would. Now, I'm not sitting here telling you that more isn't a strategy. But at some point, when you're not getting the result, more isn't always better. But again, I didn't know that. So I just did what? More. I did more free reports. I did more work on the website. I even wrote a freaking book. Then I went to another CrossFit gym and hosted another mobility seminar. And I just did this over and over and over and over and over again. But I never actually looked at the business. I never actually went back to the fundamentals. I never actually understood any of the principles that we are going to go through that we teach here. I didn't know any of it. And I just kept going and going and going. And I got some luck because of insurance, and I had some luck because I worked hard, and some luck because my overhead was low, but it wasn't producing. And how many of you guys look at your business today, sit here, be honest, raise your hand. How many of you guys look at your business and say, I should just be further along? How many of you guys say that? I should just be further along? Everyone raise your hand. I should just be further along. Welcome to my life. Every freaking day I would say that. I should just be further along, further along, further along. Now in 2017, as I'm going through this journey, I did start to get some help. I started to invest in things like this. I started to understand that maybe more wasn't always better, and that better was actually better. I started to think about and understand that marketing message actually mattered, and having a process actually mattered, and my awareness to different price points and packaging and how to run a sales, these things started to oh, okay, so there is something else out there. I didn't know how to do any of it. But I knew it existed. And as I said, more wasn't always better, but it was at this seminar in 2000, and I think this was January 2020. I had hired a marketing coach, and we started to talk about messaging. And I will tell you the story about this exact picture because this is when it all clicked for me. Up to that point, I would do any seminar I could do. I'd do a mobility seminar, I would do a workshop, I would do a stretching seminar, whoever had me, they wanted to do a seminar. But I had learned over time that potentially the thing that I had to offer, the messaging that I needed to bring to this event was different. And that going to do another event without the right skills, without the right process, without the right background, without the right pricing was wrong. And so we did a shoulder workshop at Garden State CrossFit in Roselle Park, New Jersey. This is the picture. And I started to think about things I never thought about before, like client avatar. And what was their journey? And what had they already heard? And what message I needed to have that made me different from everyone else, which turned into value for unique solution. And what I realized when I walked in that door was nobody there was looking for another chiropractor. And how did I know that? Because I went in there and I asked the question that I already knew the answer for. I said, hey, do me a favor, there's 25 people, raise your hand if you have already been to chiropractor, physical therapy, or acupuncture for your shoulder pain. Every hand went up. They didn't want me. What did they want? They wanted to get an outcome. Okay, different. Next, I had to start to think about why I was different and how I was going to show them that. Because if I thought about all the options that they chose, they went to in-network PT and they got a certain set of exercises. They went to acupuncture and laid it on the table. I went to chiro and they got their back adjusted. And that was the journey that they went on. So I started to think, well, if they think I'm that, why would they come to me? That doesn't make sense. And so I started to think, what is something that I do differently? What frustrates me about other practitioners? That what? It isn't customized. And that everyone shouldn't receive the same care. And I don't know how I found this picture, but when I did, I'm so happy I did, because I remember calling these two people up. The girl on the right was a gymnast. The guy on the right was a football player. And I remember in this example, this very picture, I brought them both up and I said, how many of you guys have been to chiro PT and it looked like everyone with a shoulder problem was getting the same treatment? They're like, yeah, interesting. I said, well, here's a beautiful example of two people that walk into this gym. They both have shoulder pain. Look at the mobility of the guy on the right. You see how his right shoulder doesn't even get up? You see that? See where the difference is? Yep. And you see how the person on the left, her shoulders go directly overhead? Yep. They both came with shoulder pain. Let me ask you, do you think both of these people should get the same treatment? No. Wow. And then after that, I started to think even more about what is it that I would do differently? What is something that I could tell them they're going to be like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Well, I brought those people in and I asked them a very simple question. I said, how many of you guys have problems with the shoulder press? Or how many have problems with pull-up? How many have problems with push-ups? And everyone raised their hand. And I said, all right, do me a favor. Keep your hand up based on the treatment you've done in the past that you did a pull-up, that you did shoulder press, that you did a push-up. And every hand went down. And I said, do you think it would be a good idea that if you actually had a problem with said exercise, that your health practitioner worked with you on said exercise? I said, my friends, that is the difference between what you are going to get everywhere else and what you're going to get at my practice. And I said, if you're interested, we're offering a free discovery visit. And we only have a certain amount of slots. So please go to the back of the room and sign up for one of the slots you have available. Lauren is back there for you. And she waved her hand, and I didn't know if anyone was going to stand up. And I swear to God, there was 25 people in there. 21 of them signed up for a discovery visit. But through that whole journey, what I realized was that working hard, yeah, that's fine. That'll get me to a certain point. Being a good clinician is great, but I didn't understand marketing. I didn't understand messaging. I didn't even know my process at the time. I didn't know what to charge, because even those 21 people coming in, if I didn't have the right price or the right sales process or the right marketing message, none of it would have mattered. And it was because of that, on that journey over 5, 6, 7, 8 years, where I've said, okay, I finally got it. I got it. And it worked. We made it through 2020. Y'all know what happened then. 21, 22, business started to grow. And I was at a point now where we were doing 500K, and I was able to sort of start to step out of the business. And I scaled it. I was ready to scale, and I was out. It was cool. I had done it. I had finally done it. It was a long journey, but I had finally done it. And so we started doing this because I kept getting questions on how'd you do it? And I was like, well, let me tell you. And here is our third event in Fort Lauderdale. And it was cool. I counted actually more than half of the people in that picture are still here. It's very cool. It was at this event where I didn't realize it at the time, but my business hadn't scaled like I thought it had. Because at that point, I had figured out how to do it with me, and I had now Kaylee and Ashton who were running the business. But it was only 30 days later where I realized that within the first 2 months of me scaling the business, it lost like 40 grand. My friends, there's no world in which scaling a business and losing 40 grand go in the same sentence. Because I realized that I didn't actually know what scaling meant, and I realized I didn't have the process in place to do it, and I realized that the problem was not them, it was me. Now the good news is we got it solved. But as you look back through the journey, which which I've talked through, at every step of the way, from being that student that just wanted to become the world-class clinician, to becoming that associate that worked on the business and started to get excited about it, but never actually learned how to market or sell or message, and then becoming the doctor who built the business and scaled it, but then stepped away and the business never actually scaled. I never actually nailed the business model. I never knew what I should do. I never knew what to charge. I never knew how to think about it. I never knew the systems or process that I need. I never realized what hailing meant, hailing, marketing, and sales. How do I tell everyone about it and give them a compelling message so they actually want to come see me? And I certainly hadn't figured out how to scale it. And so over the next hour, what I'm going to walk you through was the process that I wish that back in 2012 that someone would have sat down with Justin and just let me walk with you, bro. I'm going to teach you how to do this thing. It's not going to be easy, but if you have this model, if you know how to nail the business model, if you know how to hail it and tell everyone about it, and you know how to scale it, you're going to be just fine. What I didn't have was I needed a system. I needed a roadmap. I needed clarity. And so what I'm going to walk you through at every step of this journey is what are the checkpoints? What are the things that I need to think about? What are the things to make sure that I have in place as I go on this journey? So I want to talk about how do you actually nail the business model and what does that mean? Write this down. I think nailing your business model involves 3 things. Number 1, mindset. Number 2, it's going to be your pricing. And number 3, it's going to be the systems you have in place. And we're going to dive into each one of these. The chokehold on the growth of any business is always the psychology of the leader. It's one of my favorite lines. If it's outside of you, it's outside of your control. Agency begins the moment you stop outsourcing responsibility. I did this with my team. When we do sales, it's psychology. And I literally put the screenshot up like I just did with you. And I said to them, read this whole paragraph about his story. Tell me where the problem is. Tell me where the problem is. I said the problem is right in that parenthesis. Colorado rent is expensive. Why? Agency begins the moment you stop outsourcing responsibility. It isn't that he doesn't have the system. It isn't that he isn't good. It isn't that he doesn't know what he's doing. It's not him. It's Colorado. Because Colorado is the problem. It isn't that I haven't opened up a business yet. It isn't that I haven't run. That's the problem. My rent. Rent is expensive. If you don't get the mindset right, the rest of it is irrelevant. How do I know business owners that are stuck? I need X before I can Y. My friends, you do not need more resources. You need to be more resourceful. Red flag number 1, 2, 3, and 4 for Justin is I can't charge that much for rehab yet. I have to get more equipment in my office. When I get more equipment, then I can charge more. When I get the new space, then I'll raise my rates. When I do this, then I'll do that. Angie, I'm here before I started the business. When I open my business, then I'll learn business. You don't need more resources. You need to be more resourceful. John Maxwell said, your business will never rise above your ability to lead. So his book, his famous book, which I love, is called The 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. And this concept is called the law of the lid. And so we started with me talking about my kids and my family, but I feel the same way about my team. They are going to get stuck when I do. Tony Hsieh passed away, founder of Zappos. Strategy is what you want to achieve. Core values is how you want to behave. And I write that because of my favorite equation. That one word, which I love. Because I always tell you, your success is an equation. Your success is an equation. Does anyone know what that is? How do you spell success? Is that right? 2 C's? I went to public school. Give me a break. How do we become successful? What is it? What's the equation? We are partly responsible for your success here, and we take that very seriously. Our part of this is our process. We have a process, but that's not it. That's one thing. Because like Tony Hsieh says, our process plus your behavior will lead you to success. And when we see people are not successful here, think about this. We have controlled the variable. You all get the same material. Everyone gets the same material. You have the same level of education. You have the same degree. You live in the same country or countries. It is all controlled. So when you are not successful, why? We say you behave your way off the line of success. Our process plus your behavior leads to success. Strategy is what you want to achieve. As I said before, every new grad, every person, they want more strategy. Tell me how to do a Google ad. How do you behave with it? How do you behave with it? So we talked about mindset. We talked about Tony Robbins. We talked about John Maxwell. We talked about Tony Hsieh, all big-time entrepreneurs, thought leaders. Mindset, mindset, mindset. What is your mindset around it? How do you see it? But the second thing that we have to consider here is what's your price? Because we saw with veteran Victor, his mindset was fucked, but his price, his insurance stuff was also really, really bad. He might actually be pretty good at business, but it doesn't matter because what he's charging doesn't work. If you're charging $67 or $74 or $129 or $150, you could have all the other things. You could be the mindset guru, and you can have the funnel, and you can have AI, you can have everything. But if you don't charge the right price, it won't matter. The rest is irrelevant. Warren Buffett says the single most important decision in evaluating a business is the pricing power. The single most important decision in evaluating a business is pricing power. And so if you, as an investor, are looking and you are Uncle Warren, one of the reasons, it's not that health insurance is bad or unethical, the insurances don't pay. Like, none of that is relevant to me. I don't care. Like, I'm unemotional. None of that means anything to me. the fundamental principles of business need to work. And Uncle Warren says that the single most important decision in evaluating a business is pricing power. Now, we all know that expenses have gone up. We all know that the inflation is here. Many of us live in high cost living areas, and our staff asks for more money and student loans and interest rates and all of that. But the one thing that doesn't grow is reimbursement. Now, that is a fixed thing that you'd make the decision to be in or out. But you guys that aren't taking insurance, you have the power to control your price. Uncle Greg Crabtree, who I've talked about, who is mine and Allison's coach, who is what I believe the foremost financial person of small business, he always says that profit is not an event, it's a habit. Profit is not an event, it's a habit. And so if you are building a business that does not have a pricing structure that allows you to make profit, the rest of the conversation is irrelevant. So we talked about how do you nail the business model. The first thing we discussed was making sure that your brain is correct, making sure you're thinking about it and you're seeing it correctly. But the second thing, just as important, is going to be your price. It's going to be your price. The next one is systems. The next one is systems. Now, this is a buzzword. But it's got to be included here. When Justin talked about the ability to scale, to get to the point of scaling, the reason why he didn't do it properly or correctly, and the reason it didn't work, was because this wasn't true. That the business should work with or without the constant input of the owner. That's when you know you have a system that works. And this goes all the way down. We'll talk with different types of systems, but if someone can run a phone call without you doing it, it's a system. If someone can treat a patient and get them through a plan of care, that's a system. If someone can schedule and process a patient, that's a system. Those are all considered systems. But your system will not work at the most fundamental level if it won't work without you.